Hello everyone and welcome you to GST Workshop Series 2021. We are very happy this year. Apart from the main workshop that we do every year, this year we have come up with something very innovative. One of our pillars that we had thought for the theme 2021 was innovation. And I'm thankful to the IDT Committee Chairman C.A. Bishan Shah for coming up with a real innovative idea, wherein we are also giving you pre-recorded introductory sessions wherein the speakers will be sharing with you very important rules, insights and amendments pertaining to the topic which the main faculty is going to cover in the workshop. I am extremely thankful to all the faculties who have agreed to come and share their knowledge, share the pre-recorded videos, and I am sure this step of ours will be a great enriching value add to all of you. Thank you once again for having the trust in Ahmedabad and attending this series, and your suggestions and feedback are always welcome. Thank you so much.
Welcome all the participants. We at Ahmedabad branch of WRC of ICAI are very much thankful to our chairman CA Harit Dhariwal sir, who has given us a motto and aim and vision for the year, which is ICAI: ideation, collaboration, adaptability and innovation. With that, we come with this introductory lectures which are pre-recorded for all of you. And in any game, it is said that your soldiers are required to be on your table. As GST is a big game changer for the businesses, we chartered accountants are always ready and equipped to help our businesses and clients at any moment of time with swift and smartly. And that's why we have recorded all these videos which will enable you to solve your issues related to GST, and you will be able to help your clients in a much better way, as we all are passing through this difficult time, and for GST we need some refreshing knowledge pools. So that's why we have recorded this video. I hope the same will be helpful to all of you, and happy learning. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Hello friends. At the outset, I congratulate Ahmedabad branch of ICAI for organizing this wonderful series on GST. I would congratulate the chairman of Ahmedabad branch and the chairman of the committee which is organizing this GST series for devising such a wonderful idea. I am also grateful to the branch for inviting me for this session. Today's topic is input tax credit. I have been informed that I need to make you acquainted with the provisions of input tax credit under the GST law. I am not going to deal with the intricacies and the core issues of input tax credit. I'm not going to deal with the interpretations of the various provisions of the input tax credit. However, I'll try to familiarize you with the provisions, the basic provisions and the framework of the input tax credit. Friends, I was told by one of my mentor initially when I started my practice that the credit, Sanvar credit, is not a free lunch. Similarly, input tax credit is not a free lunch. We need to understand that the input tax credit is a concession granted by the government which can be utilized for payment of taxes. It is not our constitutional right. It is not the vested right of a taxpayer. It is a concession granted by the legislature. Honorable Supreme Court has said that the input tax credit or even any credit under the Sanvar credit rules or under the VAT rules, the credit is a matter of legislative process and it can be granted only by way of an authority of law. So it is not something that we have a benefit of a credit available without satisfying any conditions. It is a conditional benefit. See, there are different terms like a vested right. Whenever we refer to the vested right, we remembering the Article 300A of the Constitution, which protects our vested right, which protects our property. In many judgments, it has been laid down by the courts that the SANVAT credit which is accrued to a taxpayer is a vested right, and therefore the provisions, the protection of Article 300A is applicable. However, we need to make a fine distinction here. We need to understand that what has been protected by Article 300A is the right which has been vested. It is the benefit of a credit which has been accrued. It is not going to protect the benefit of a credit which is yet to be availed. So whenever we are availing a credit, we'll have to go by the provisions in a strict manner. We have to satisfy all the conditions laid down in the statutory provisions. Once the credit is availed rightfully and lawfully within the four corners of the law, then that benefit of a credit can be treated as a vested right, which may get the protection of Article 300A. But at all times, we are not allowed to say that, sir, this is my benefit, this is my right, this is my lunch, I can have it at all points in time. No. So we need to understand, and we need to make our clients understand, we need to make the taxpayer understand that he is required to satisfy the basic conditions, not just the basic conditions, all the conditions which have been laid down in the provisions. So today, I'll quickly and broadly deal with the various aspects concerning the ITC. First is availing the input tax credit or taking of the input tax credit. Then it comes to reversal of the credit, and then finally utilization of a credit. See, the provisions relating to the ITC in the Central and the State Goods and Service Tax Act 2017 are contained in different sections. The section 16 and 17 collectively deals with how the credit is to be availed. Once the credit is availed, thereafter the credit has to be reversed according to Rule 42 and 43. Then there is a section 49 which deals with how the credit has to be utilized. Then there is another rule, that is 86A and 86B, and even 36(4) to some extent, that deals with how the credit is to be utilized. So these are the various provisions: section 16, 17, 18, Rule 42, Rule 43, Rule 86A, Rule 86B, and Rule 36 are dealing with all the aspects relating to the ITC. Friends, whenever I read section 16 and 17, it always reminds me of my old experience with my daughter. One fine day, my wife came to me and she said, she complained in fact, that my daughter is frequently asking for a chocolate. She said, now you please address this issue. So I called my daughter and then I told her that, see, you are at liberty to eat as many chocolates you want. So we know that the doctors usually say, the psychiatrists usually say that never deny anything to your child. Never neglect his or her requirements and the desires. So I found the middle way. I said, you can have as many chocolates as you want. There is no problem. There is no limit. But I have certain conditions. You have to follow certain procedures. What? Before eating the chocolate, you need to wash your mouth. Before opening the wrapper of a chocolate, you need to register. You need to make an entry in your diary that what was the batch number and the expiry date of that chocolate. Before eating a chocolate, you need to share 1/4 piece of the chocolate with somebody else. You are not going to eat the chocolate when you are all alone in the home. Whenever you want to eat the chocolate, you need to go yourself with mother to buy the chocolate. You can have only Dairy Milk chocolate. Once you eat the chocolate, you need to wash your mouth first. Once you eat the chocolate, you have to return the wrapper to your mother, and you cannot eat the chocolate whole of the chocolate at once. So did not reply anything to me, and then she went to her mother and said, Mom, it's fine, I'm ready to comply with all the conditions, I don't mind, but I don't want to buy the Dairy Milk chocolate now. I don't want Dairy Milk chocolate anymore. Now please get me the Leans or the Godiva chocolate only. So friends, it's like there are so many conditions so many stipulations, so many procedures have to be complied with. If we don't comply with those procedures and the conditions, the credit is not available to us. Section 16, subsection 1, which confers the benefit of a credit on the taxpayer. It says it starts with subject to the conditions and the restrictions as may be prescribed. So by following the conditions as may be prescribed in the rules, the taxpayer has to avail the credit. Over and above that, the credit is available with respect to the inward supplies used or intended to be used for the business. So it is to be used or intended to be used in the course or furtherance of business. So I am flying to Ladakh for my personal leisure and I am having a tax credit in the invoice raised by the Indigo to me. I cannot have the credit, I cannot use the credit because that inward supply is not used for my business. Please understand, friends, earlier in Sanvat credit regime, in the excise regime, even under the VAT law, the credit was linked to the outward supply, to the excisable manufacturing. Here, the government has gone one step ahead. They said all the credits relating to your business are available to you, subject to other conditions. So if it satisfies the business nexus, business condition, that if the expenditure is meant for the business, the credit is available. There is no issue. This will also invite the old issues under the income tax law, that which expenditure is to be considered as a business expenditure and which expenditure is not to be considered as a business expenditure. I will not get into much detail of it. I will just float this point before you, that the nexus with the business has to be clearly, unconditionally satisfied. If the expenditure is not meant for the business, the credit is not available. However, there are many judgments under the income tax law where it has been clearly laid down that assessing officer does not have a power to decide which expenditure has to be incurred by the assessee. Whether the expenditure is necessary for his business or not, that is not to be decided by the department. That has been left upon the assessee to decide. He knows his business, he knows how to conduct his business. So he is in a better position to take a decision that whether the expenditure is needed for that business or not. So if that expenditure has been used for the business, whether or not it was needed, the credit is available in terms of section 16(1). Then we are coming to section 16 subsection 2, which deals with 4 more conditions, basic conditions. 1, the taxpayer has to have a tax invoice or any document basis with the credit is available. Second, the taxpayer must have received the goods or the services for which the credit has been availed. Third, the supplier must have paid the tax, actually paid the tax to the government. And fourth, he should have filed the return. If these 4 conditions are satisfied, then the ITC, benefit of ITC, will accrue to the taxpayer. It is very much necessary to understand whether these 4 conditions are always satisfied or not. Whether the supplier has paid the tax or not. We have so many judgments now, starting from the Supreme Court, which says that the default or a fault on part of the vendor, on part of the supplier, is beyond the control of the buyer. So there is a principle, there is a doctrine of lex non cogit ad impossibilia. One cannot be asked to do something which is impossible, which is beyond his control. Whether the supplier pays the tax or not, a buyer cannot decide. I am availing the telephony services from Airtel or Idea or Vodafone or Reliance, BSNL. I cannot ensure that they are going to pay the GST which has been charged in my invoice. That is something impossible. So the courts have said in the past regime that in such a scenario the credit cannot be denied. It is beyond the control of the taxpayer. However, in GST we have a specific provision which has been incorporated here, that the tax must have been actually paid. See, there is a word actually paid. So mere payment of a tax is not relevant. What has been relevant is actual payment of a tax. So we'll have to establish that the other person, the supplier, has actually paid the tax, and then only we can take the credit. Sometimes it might happen that the credit has been reflected in our GSTR 2A. So we are happy, sir, I have a credit in my GSTR 2A. So the supplier would have filed his GSTR 1, he would have filed GSTR 3B even, but he would have paid the tax by utilizing wrong credit. Some days later, the department would conduct an investigation in case of the supplier and would find that the credit which he availed in the GSTR 3B was illegal, was wrong, and he would have been required to reverse the credit, or he may be subjected to investigation. Then the question will arise whether in such a scenario the credit which has been availed by the taxpayer by satisfying the condition of an actual payment is valid or not. Then there are so many other conditions. If you have availed the credit, if you have received the inward supply and thereafter you fail to make payment to the supplier, so this is a moral law. It has nothing to do with the GST, but the GST law is going one step ahead of it. It says, the proviso says that if you have received the inward supply and you fail in making payment to the supplier of the tax and the value of a supply, then you need to reverse the credit. The payment has to be made within 180 days. Now, what shall amount to failure in payment? That needs to be interpreted. If I am retaining the security deposit from the bill of the supplier, whether it amounts to failure in payment. If the supplier is willingly extending a credit of 365 days to me, which is more than 180 days stipulated in the proviso, can I be deemed as failed in making payment, and should I reverse my credit? There are so many issues. Then the government says that the credit can be re-availed. You reverse the credit once and the credit can be re-availed as and when you make the payment. There is a specific rule for this, there is a specific provision for it. Then the another important condition relating to the availing of a credit, that is in 16(4), that is linked with the time limit. Can I avail my credit at any point in time, at my sweet will and desire? See, in this Sanvet regime, in the earlier days, we used to take credit even after 4 years, 5 years. There was no prohibitory provision in the Sanvet credit rules in the earlier days. But here in the GST, they have stipulated a limit, time limit. As per 16(4), I cannot avail the credit beyond a specified time. That is the due date for filing of my GSTR 3B for the month of September following the financial year to which the invoice belongs. So if I have an invoice dated 1st January 2021, I won't be able to take the credit after filing the return, after the due date for filing of return of GSTR 3B for the month of September 2021. So today I cannot avail credit of an invoice which was dated 2018 or 2017 or even 2019. So here, can we stand up and argue that, sir, look, this is my benefit, merely because I have not followed the procedure, I have flouted the procedural law, I should not be deprived of my substantive benefit which is otherwise conferred upon me. This is the value added tax. GST is nothing but a value added tax. Can we raise that argument? It's a big question. Then friends, it comes to section 17. Once we are able to avail the credit in terms of section 16, what we need to see is whether the credit is being used for the business purpose or not. Whether the credit is being used partly for the business purposes and partly for the personal purposes, like my telephone. I am using my cellular phone for both the purposes, professional as well as personal. So can I take the full credit of the telephone bill? I might be calling to my wife, to my kids in the evening, and the expenditure has been debited to my business account on which the GST has been charged. So to such kind of scenario, section 17(1) will be applicable. 17(1) is dealing with the credits which is intended or which is meant for both the purposes, taxable, business as well as non-businesses. Similarly, section 17(2), which deals with the credits used partly for the purpose of taxable supply and partly for exempt supply. So if these, if there is any credit which is partly used, then there is a need for reversal, and the reversal formula has been given in Rule 42 and Rule 43. Thereafter, it comes to a list host of services and the goods which are prohibited, for which the credit cannot be availed. It is popularly known as a block credit. That is section 17 subsection 5. There is a long list. I said no, that you can have as many chocolates as you want, but you need to follow the conditions. So this is the another list of conditions. You cannot take the credit of a motor vehicle if it has been used for the transportation of passengers and you are not into the same business. You cannot take the credit of canteen services, food and beverages. If I am driving a car for my profession and I'm getting it repaired in the authorized service station, I cannot take the credit of those invoices, because that motor car is meant for the transportation of passengers only. It is not meant for the transportation of goods. And if it is relating to the transportation of passengers and I am not into the same kind of activity, I am not supplying that vehicle as such, I am not hiring out that vehicle, I am not transporting, I am not into the service of transportation of passengers, then I am not eligible for the credit. The credit is a block credit. So there is a long list given in section 17. I am not going to deal with each and every situation, but we need to understand what are the block credits and whether the credits are taken or not. Similarly, the vessels, aircraft, etc. If I am buying a personal aircraft for my hobby, then the credit is not available even though the payment is made from my professional firm. Another list of miscellaneous services like food and beverages, outdoor catering, beauty treatment, health services, cosmetics, plastic surgery, etc. These services are also block credit and the credit is not available. Then the important category of a block credit is section 17(5) subsection 5 clause C and clause D. That is works contract services and other inward supply of goods and services meant for the construction. If I am getting my office building constructed from a contractor and he is raising an invoice along with the GST, though I am into a supply of a taxable service, the credit is not available. Though the building is meant for my profession only, though I am claiming the depreciation over the that office building under the income tax law, I am not entitled for a credit, because the works contract credit and the construction related credits of goods and services are blocked. They are available only in case of further supply of a works contract or a construction services. It is not just that the construction or a works contract service as such is blocked. There are so many catches. Even if I am engaging a designer for designing my office interior, then designing service is also blocked. If I am availing a loan for construction of that office building and the banker is charging processing fees to me along with the GST, I am not entitled to the credit of that GST, because that inward supply is meant for construction of a immobile property. There are certain exceptions, that if the credit is relating to the plant and machinery, the plant and machinery is also defined there, then the credit is available and that bar of section 17(5) and D will not apply. Besides that, there are certain other categories where the credit is not available. like the composition supply, the dealer has opted for the composition and the tax has been paid, the credit is not available. If the inward supply is meant for a personal consumption, then also the credit is not applicable. Goods lost, stolen, destroyed, written off, disposed of by way of a gift or free samples. If I am buying the Diwali gifts for distribution to my clients, it is definitely meant for my business. I am trying to maintain the cordial relations with my clients by distributing this Diwali gifts. But in such case, the credit is not available because it is meant for the free supply by way of a gift or samples. There is lot of interpretations involved. I will not dig it to a further extent. But in many practical business situation, you will come across the hit of this particular provision. If the goods are lost in a fire, then also we need to read the provision. If the asset of a business has been obsolete and written off, then also we need to read this provision. Besides that, if the tax has been paid by the supplier under any proceedings of section 74, 129 and 130, then also the credit is not available. If there is a search over the premises of the supplier and the supplier was made to pay the tax on it, he won't be able to, he may be charging, he may be raising a debit note of the tax to the taxpayer, but the taxpayer will not be able to take the credit of it because the tax was paid as part of the proceeding of section 74. So, in such a case also, the credit is not available. Thereafter, there is a special machinery, that is section 18. In certain cases, the credit has to be reversed. In certain cases, the credit has to be availed. Like earlier, my product was an exempt product. Now, from 1/7/2021, the product becomes taxable product. Then I am having a raw material in stock. I am having semi-finished goods in stock on which I would have incurred the expenditure, incurred the GST, and the credit would not have been availed by me because the product was exempt. That raw material was meant for an exempt supply only. So I would not have availed the credit. But now suddenly, from a given point in time, the product becomes a taxable product. So according to section 18, I should be allowed the credit of stock of raw materials, semi-finished, etc., or even the capital goods, subject to certain terms and conditions. The detailed procedure has been given in Rule 40 relating to the availing of such kind of credit. Then section 18 is also dealing with a situation where there is a transfer of a business by way of an amalgamation, sale, merger, demerger, lease, etc. Then the balance of a credit available in the transferor entity will be transferred to the transferee entity, and for that there is a procedure which needs to be followed, like filing of an ITC 02 and all. Friends, as I said, that once you avail the credit, you need to see whether the credit is to be reversed or not. See, section 17(5) is a block credit. The credit cannot be availed. But if the credit has been availed as per the provision of 16 and 17, but thereafter the portion of a credit is required to be reversed, like a part of that credit is utilized for the non-business purposes or for an exempt supply. Let's take an example of an hospital which is providing a taxable service as well as an exempt service. Health services which are exempt from payment of GST, however the cosmetic services, cosmetic surgeries and all are taxable. So the hospital is providing both the services, taxable and exempt. It's having a host of inward supplies. Only the GST is charged. GST has been paid by the hospital. So in such a case where it is not possible at the time of availing of a credit that these particular credit is meant for an exempt supply and these set of a credit is meant for a taxable supply, the procedure of Rule 42 can be followed. So the credit can be availed once, and thereafter there is a set procedure like T, T1, T2, T3, C1, C2, D1 and D2. All these formulas have to be worked out and you need to reverse the credit which is attributable to the exempt supply. in nutshell, Rule 42 says that the credit exclusively meant for non-business purpose is not to be availed. Credit exclusively meant for the exempt supply is not to be availed. Credit exclusively meant for the taxable supply is to be fully availed. And thereafter, all the other credits have to be considered as a common credit, which needs to be availed, and it needs to be reversed in a proportion of total exempt value divided by to the total turnover. So the hospital will be required to identify the common credits, and in a proportion of the taxable value and the exempt value, the credit will be reversed. Friends, from 1st April 2019, there was another provision incorporated in the Rule 42, which was specifically meant for the real estate developers. Because in case of real estate developers, units booked prior to the date of completion certificate, prior to the date of issuance of a completion certificate, was taxable, and the units booked afterwards were treated as sale of building as such and not been subjected to tax as per para 5 of schedule 3. However, when the builder is constructing a property, constructing a building, it was not known to him that which unit will become a taxable unit and which unit will become an exempt unit. He might be engaging a RCC contractor for constructing the whole framework. That RCC contractor will charge a GST to the builder, and builder, before the receipt of a completion certificate, must be paying tax with respect to only those units which were booked. He is not aware that how many units will be taxed and how many units will not be taxed. So in order to resolve this anomaly, the government has modified the Rule 42 with effect from 1st April 2019, and they have specified the formula how the credit has to be reversed by the builder. Again, the principle remains same. The total carpet area which is considered as a taxable carpet area, to that extent the credit is available. Rest of the carpet area on which the tax is not been paid will influence the reversal of a credit. Similar provision is incorporated in Rule 43 also. The Rule 42 is dealing with the inputs and input services. Rule 43 is dealing with the capital goods. So if you have a capital goods, if you have purchased the machinery which has been capitalized in the balance sheet, in the books of accounts, and the credit has been availed for the purchase of that machinery, then the credit has to be reversed in terms of Rule 43. Because you are not sure whether the machine and to what extent the machine has been used for manufacturing of a taxable product and a manufacturing of an exempt product. It cannot be bifurcated. So for that reason, there is a formula given in Rule 43. You avail the credit, take the full credit first, and thereafter reverse the credit in 60 equal installments. 60 EMIs are fixed, and for each of the EMI you will have to apply the ratio of E by F, that is exempt divided by total, and the credit has to be reversed accordingly. Then friends, it comes to utilization. We have dealt with availing of a credit, then reversal of a credit, and once we have a balance credit available in our electronic credit ledger, that is available for utilization, that is for the purpose of payment of taxes. However, there are certain conditions attached to it. As I said, the section 49 is dealing with how the credit has to be utilized for payment of tax. You cannot utilize the credit of an SGST against the CGST, CGST against the SGST. If you utilize the credit of an IGST, it has to be utilized in a particular format, particular manner. Then, in 2019, there was another condition laid down, that is Rule 86A. That when the commissioner or the authorized officer has a reason to believe that ITC has been availed fraudulently without actually receiving the goods or services, or the receiver is not conducting business at all, or the recipient is not in possession of the credit document, proper credit document. So in the given set of circumstances, the commissioner or the authorized officer can block your credit. Like I have a credit balance of 50 crore rupees in my electronic credit ledger, which was rightfully availed, validly availed at the relevant point in time. But now my officer believes, or he has a reason, he has a reason to believe, there is a difference between the belief and the reason to believe, that the credit which I have availed and lying in my electronic credit ledger was fraudulently availed, was availed without having actual document or without having received the goods or services. In such a case, he can block a portion of my credit, full or the part of my credit available in the electronic credit ledger. You need to pass a proper order and he will block the credit so that I will not be able to utilize that credit. That order will cease to be in effect after a year from the date of order, or else if the circumstances exist that the commissioner is convinced that the credit is not required to be blocked, then the release order may be passed and the credit can be made available to the taxpayer for utilization. So that is Rule 86A, which is in work today, which was introduced in 2019. Then another condition which has been recently incorporated for utilization of a credit, that is Rule 86B, which says that if your total value of a supply for a particular month is more than 50 lakhs, then the provision is applicable, this provision is not applicable. You are not eligible to utilize the input tax credit for payment of a tax in excess of the 99% of your output tax liability. For example, I have a balance credit of 10 lakh rupees. I need to pay a tax of 1 lakh rupees. My output tax liability is 1 lakh and I am having a balance for utilization of 10 lakhs. So according to this provision, I am not allowed to utilize the credit for an amount more than 99,000. 1,000 has to be paid in cash. I don't know what can be the logic behind this provision. Let's not get into it. But this is the provision which we need to comply in almost all cases, except the given exceptions. That the managing director, partner, proprietor, karta who have filed the returns for at last 2 financial years for which the 139(1) date has not been expired, then the taxpayer would have availed the refund of input tax credit, because while granting the refund, while sanctioning the refund, the authorized officer or the commissioner must have scrutinized everything and then only the refund would have been sanctioned. So there is no further need to put a restriction on the taxpayer. So considering that, the relaxation has been given. Then the relaxation has been also be given to the government departments and the public sector undertaking, because we have a reason to believe that the government, the public sector undertakings will not indulge into a wrong credit claim. So this, in nutshell, this 86B is dealing with the utilization of a credit. One cannot utilize a credit for payment more than 99% of the output tax. Something has to be paid in cash. Then there is another condition relating to the ITC, that is Rule 36(4), which is bothering a lot to the taxpayers and the chartered accountants. According to 36(1), I shall not avail a credit if it is not been reflected in my GSTR 2A, in nutshell. So I am allowed to take the credit to certain extent. Earlier the ratio which was prescribed in 2019 was 20%. Then in December 2019 they reduced it to 10%, and then in January 2021 they reduced it to 5%. So I am eligible to take the credit in respect of only those invoices which are reflected in my GSTR 2A and 5% of that credit over and above that. So if my GSTR 2A is showing a credit of 100 rupees, I am eligible to avail the credit to the extent of 105 and not more than that. Even though I have a valid tax paying documents, even though I satisfy all the conditions of section 16 subsection 2, I am satisfying all the conditions of section 17(1), 17(2), 17(5), despite of that I am not eligible to take credit. So that is Rule 36(4). Friends, with this I would like to end my presentation. Thank you very much.